Dave the Builder on KFM with Premier Timber Frame Homes, your expert guide to self-built homes. PremierTimberFrameHomes.ie.
Yeah, week 2 of our renewed building slot with Dave McManus of Premier Timber Frame Homes. Good to talk to you again, Dave, and welcome back in to studio. If anybody has any questions for Dave, get them in to us, 0833 97 97 97. What's the topic of the day today, Dave?
Yeah, topic of today is design, planning permission and budgeting. So I suppose just to even a step back before we kind of delve into the design, planning permission and budgeting, the majority of the people that we be kind of dealing with would be people that are building in the countryside in Ireland, okay? A lot of them would have their own greenfield site, but some would be going to buy a site or have bought a site. So there's a few things that you need to check before you start designing your house. The first thing would be, is your site suitable for building? And do you come under the category of what's called local needs for the planning permission? Okay, so local needs is, were you either born and reared within a 5 kilometre zone of that site that you want to build on? Or have you lived in that area for over 12 years? Now, there's a couple of other things, like if you're farming in the area, those two first things I was talking about wouldn't come into play. So farming is a different type of category, you know. But so if the answer is yes to those questions, then you can proceed to the next stage. So the next stage would be, go get your percolation test holes done on the greenfield site, okay? That's going to tell a tale. That's going to tell you if your land is suitable for building in the first place. So regardless of if you have good test holes or bad test holes, make sure you get the paperwork from the engineer that's doing the test holes, because even if they are bad, all's not lost. There is other systems that you can go for. One is called a raised bed percolation system, and the other is called a constructed integrated wetland system. Okay, now they're not that common, but it all's not lost.
I have heard a couple of instances where people have been refused planning permission based on that, because, say for example, out in Ballyteague or somewhere, and I'm just using that, it can be on bogland or wetland, and what's the concern there, that the house will sink, is it? Well, I
suppose if you were, years ago, you were able to build on bog, they used to pile drive, you know what I mean? So I don't think that's the real concern. The real concern is, I suppose now they don't really want you building on bog at all, you know. And if there's bog in the area, you know, it's really down to the planner on the day what his thoughts are and what the circumstances are. It's a very individual basis, but it is down to the drainage, how fast the water can drain away on the soil. So if you've bogland, it wouldn't drain away that quickly. Now, as I say, all's not lost, but if, especially in Kildare where we've a lot of bog, there is high fail rates near the bog. You know,
absolutely, yeah. What else have we got then on this design, planning, permission and budgeting?
So, once you have your test holes done and you're after getting a good result, and you have your local needs, you're under that category, then I'd proceed down to your local architect. Go to your local architect and have a run through what kind of design that's going to suit you and your family. Just remember, you'd want a budget in mind going down to your local architect. It's always good to get a consultation with a QS if you could as well, or if you could. Some architectural services, like let's say John Cross out in Allenwood, he runs a service and he'd be able to do the budgeting as well for you, you know. So he has everything in the one kind of under the one umbrella. But like just to remember that this is one of the most important parts of the building process, because if you go for something that you can't afford, you know, like, it can get very, very messy. It can get harder to get a mortgage, it can be harder to build, it can drag out for years and years, and something that could have been solved in the beginning is now a drawn out long headache, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to touch on the mortgage, So let's say we have John and Mary. They're both working in Intel. They're both getting €50,000 a year. So that's 100,000 in total coming into the household. They'd be able to apply for a mortgage for around 400,000. You know, that's a kind of a generic kind of idea. So that's something that they could also have a chat with their architect about, you know. But I would definitely give advice is when you have your plans done, run them by a QS, you know.
Absolutely. There's some messages coming in already, and keep them coming so that we can put them to Dave this morning. One here says, Dave, in relation to planning permission, is it harder to get permission for a timber frame house in Ireland as opposed to the typical kind of bricks and mortar?
Yeah, good question. To be honest with you, it doesn't matter if you build in blocks or timber frame construction. Like, they're both equal in the eyes of the building regulations and the building laws. So the answer is it should be no harder or no easier.
Okay, no harder, no easier. That's from Mary in Claim, by the way. Michael in Straffan says, Dave, we're building a big house with high ceilings throughout the house, a standard gable-to-gable property. The prices we are getting in are way above our budget. So this goes back to what you were talking about there in relation to price, Dave. I work in the industrial industry erecting units in Dublin. Is it possible to build the house out of steel structure and infill with timber? Have you ever seen this being done before?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like there's many methods to ways to build a house. I suppose what he definitely wants to do there is he wants to get a structural engineer on board to design all the steel work, and maybe, you know, infilling in stud work, or that's no problem as well. But if you got a structural engineer that was familiar with timber frame and steel work, but just remember that everything has to be up to building regulations. So each stage will have to be signed off before it's covered up. You know what I mean? So, as I said, there's many ways to build a house, but you just need to make sure that you're meeting the building regulations today.
Okay, another one says, generally, how long does it take from the start to finish of the planning permission process? Does that really depend on the house? Just this listener says it's been going on for quite a while and it feels like it's never ending. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, it is a process. It is a process. We've seen planning applications draw out for a long, long time, you know.
A couple of years?
Oh, look, it depends. First of all, it depends on a few different things. Sometimes it depends on the architect's office. Are they busy? Are they out the door? Are they popular? Maybe they're popular for a good reason, because they're getting people planning permission. Okay, so I wouldn't let that be a put off. How quick are you getting the information back to the architect? Because sometimes that can be a process as well, because there is a lot of information that the client would have to bring to the architect. And also, if you got refused the first time, and then you might have to get more information, and that's where it can get kind of drawn out then, you know what I mean? In a best case scenario, from the time that you go from design, budgeting and planning permission, like in the best case scenario, you're looking at about 5 or 6 months. Worst case scenario, you're going into years, you know.
Okay, there's another one in here from Ray. Says, can you ask Dave to compare the price of a log cabin, mobile home or timber frame cabin to the modular building costing the OPW €440,000? What would be the lifespan on a log cabin, timber frame, etc., says Ray. So not sure if you're aware about the modular homes that the government are building. I think a lot of people are saying, well, they're too expensive at €440,000 each. But generally, what's the cost of them and what would be the lifespan?
Look, I suppose the log cabins that are being sold in Ireland today are a great short-term solution for many, many people. I suppose timber being exposed on the outside, facing the elements of the wind, the rain and the sun constantly, it's not a great scenario. Now, out in Alaska and Canada, where they build log cabins out of logs, that's not what's going on in Ireland today. It's a different type of construction. It's a little bit more flimsy. Now, I'm not saying that for them all. There is some great log cabin companies out there. But, as I say, timber on the outside facing them elements, there is a lifespan on it. You know what I mean? I suppose it depends on how well the individual is treating the timber and how well it's looked after. If it's not well looked after, it can be gone within 20 years. If it is well looked after, you can go double that. Do you know what I mean? Timber frame housing is different. Timber frame housing has a standard lifespan of 60 years plus, because timber frame structure is behind, let's say, a block or some kind of plaster finish, or behind, you know. So it's not, the timber frame structure isn't actually facing the elements of the wind, sun and the rain. Okay, so that has a lot longer lifespan. In regards to the pricing comparison to what the government have come up with, look, at my own opinion, it seems extortionate what the price is. Now, do we know the full story about what's going on? Is that including massive site development before the modular homes goes in? I'd say so. Like, I don't know how much of the picture that we're actually getting. You know, I know obviously the papers are saying they're 440, but there could be a lot going on in the background there.
Yeah,
you know,
because a lot of people would look at it and say, well, you get a decent sized house for €440,000, and if you're only building a small modular home for that price, is it the best use of the money? But as you say, there might be stuff going on in the background there. Christina in Maynooth says, question regarding timber-built cabins in a yard. She's given an experience here, a semi-detached house in a housing estate. The timber build behind the house versus a concrete extension, is this allowed? What height can the cabin be, because it's taken up nearly all the yard space? You probably can't comment on that individual case, but generally, do you need planning permission for a log cabin, say, in the back garden?
So, if it's over 25 square metres, the answer is usually yes. Now, you can build an extension onto the back of your house, and it's usually around 40 square metres. Obviously, you still need about, let's say in a housing estate like that, you still need a minimum of 25 square metres yard space or garden space there as well, just from my memory. I suppose, look, at planning permission is needed for a lot of things. Anything that you're going to live in, planning permission is needed.
Okay, there's a lot of messages coming in here, so we'll fly through a couple more. What is the best insulation to use in a house today? We're building an extension. There is so much information online, we're getting confused. That's from Claire and Tony in Nace.
Yeah, so I suppose it depends on the type of extension. If it was a block extension, the solid board, PIR board, in between the outer leaflet block and the inner leaflet block, 150mm PIR board, Kingspan or Extra Term or one of those good qualities I'd be recommending. And in the roof would be a 300mm or so of loft roll. That's a wool. If you were using timber frame extension, I would highly recommend to go with a high density wool insulation. Now, the reason I love wool so much is because it's fire retardant up to 1,000 degrees. What the Norwegians are doing over the last few years are they're building a 300mm stud, so it's a foot deep, and they're filling that stud solely of high density wool, and they're achieving some really, really great U values over there. And look, if the Norwegians are doing it, it's good enough for us.
Joe rang in to ask, is it difficult to get insurance on a log cabin?
I'd say it would be. I know one guy down in Ballateague, as you were just talking about. He built a log cabin about 20 odd years ago, and he said, we were down there retiling the roof a few years back, and he said to us that he had to go to the UK for insurance for the log cabin. Now, it was quite expensive, but he could get it.
All right, lads, my son has been trying for a few years now to build on his own land. He does a bit of farming. He has a family, his wife and himself. They're working, kids going to school. Their life is where they have been living there since they were very young. KCC just keeps saying no need to live there. He was born in the country. He doesn't want to live in a housing estate. It's a shame that young people with families can't live on their own land. And unfortunately, we're hearing stories of that time and time again, aren't we?
Absolutely. And look, there could be different, maybe there's too many houses in that area at the moment. I know like the rules are kind of slightly changing. I know you can build up to about 15 to 25 houses within 1 square kilometre, depending on a few different aspects. If there's loads of hedging and covering and stuff like that, you can kind of get in more, but it's around 15 per square kilometre. If you're at a crossroads, you can actually get more because there's different roads going in different directions and stuff like that. I would recommend for that person to have a chat with somebody. If they go through the Kildare Planning Permission website, find out which architect is getting the most planning permission in that area, and I'd go and sit down and I'd have a chat with them. I wouldn't let it go unless I really
explore all avenues. Absolutely
explore all avenues.
All right. Any final bits and pieces then, Dave, or have we kind of touched on the majority of things with planning permission?
Just touched on it all. I'll just, as I say, once you have your local needs, get your test holes done. Your budget is very important. You know, your local architect is the person that's going to advise you then after that. But don't skip any steps. It's like walking up a stairs. If you miss a couple of steps, you could fall back down. You know what I mean? So step by step.
Good stuff. We'll do it again next week at the same time, Thursday morning, just after 10 o'clock. Dave McManus, thanks for joining us.
Dave the Builder on KFM with Premier Timber Frame Homes, your expert guide to self-built homes. PremierTimberFrameHomes.ie